Hi, a very good afternoon to everybody. As you all know, that our today's webinar is on the recent certain directions as on 28th April. Thank you for joining our webinar for today. And a few things before we begin our webinar. As you all know, it is going to be a 1 hour session, out of which 45 minutes we will be talking about the topic. And in the end, 15 minutes, we will be running a quick poll. We just have like 3 questions. And we request everybody to participate and answer. And also simultaneously, if you see on your chat box, you'll be able to see there's a Q&A section. So you can post your queries regarding today's webinar topic. And in those 15 minutes after we are done with the poll, we'll be addressing and answering those questions. And then we will end the webinar. So I will now hand over to Mr. Ashwin.
Yeah, thank you, Alva, and welcome everybody for this important session today. Thank you for taking out your time on the working day. Although it's a Friday, weekend is looking forward, but thank you for joining. Yeah, can we go on the next slide, please? So today's session is on the certain new directions, as Alva has already said so, and it has gained some media attention also recently. We will look at some of those. And first, we will start with the introduction of our company and what we do. And then we will come on the main topic, which is the certain new directives. Yeah, next slide, please. So just play. Yeah. So, so that's our quick introduction. We are a CPA firm based out of Colorado, Denver, and we focus on data security and privacy audits. Yeah, thank you, Olga. Can you go to the next slide, please? Next slide, please. So we are a Denver-based CPA firm. We are into SOC 2 audits, ISO audits, and we also in certification body, and 2 offices where we operate from: Mumbai in India and Denver in Colorado. Next slide, please. We also listed auditor rather with certain, and that's the interesting topic today that we are going to take up. That's our listing. Next slide, please. That's my background. I've been in this industry for almost 20 years. I have lost my hair, grayed out my hair in this industry, being in the auditing, governance, risk and compliance areas for almost 20 years. And I have about 40 years of total industry experience. I'm also qualified CPA and MBA with some of the certifications stated here: CITP, CSSP, CISA, and so on. And as a company, we focus more on cloud security, data security, and privacy. SOC 2 and ISO are part of those. We also do some audits on the certain requirements, and I think many of you know me personally. Also, a lot of you are my friends in the social circles and personally know me also. Next slide, please. So this topic has gained some media attention since the new directives have been announced, and every day we find some news on the new guidelines. Some are positive, some are negative. Some are talking, yes, it is good. Some are talking about privacy attention and VPNs and small aspects of other aspects of this. But in today's session, we will give our thoughts, our opinion, and what we feel as an auditor on these standards. Of course, we are not an authority, but it is just our opinion. Of course, we have a disclaimer at the end of the session also. But the whole idea is to give our thoughts, our opinion on what this could mean and what companies would have to do to comply with the new directives. So it's a directive; it's not a advisory. Companies will have to follow this, and specifically if you're operating in India, This is a mandate. We will have to adapt to this. And in our opinion, it is good for the country. It is good for the cybersecurity, because until now we had only RBI, SEBI, IRDA, few mandatory bodies which were governing some kind of cyber security requirements. But CERT-In has now given this new directive, which we applied to all other entities and bodies also. So of course, DoT was also there for telecom companies, but other service providers, many of them were unregulated. There were no mandates to provide any kind of information on cyber incidents, data breaches, etc. So now this is a good move, in my opinion. Of course, you'll find several media talks talking negatively also, but for the country and for the industry as auditors also, it is a good step. Next slide, please. So Economic Times says about VPN. Of course, VPNs have got some more media attention, looks like, but it is more than just VPN, and you'll find more for VPN. But if you see the industry as a whole, the whole service industry is impacted or would have to comply with these norms, not just VPN providers. Next, we've just taken a few just to show the importance of this new directive, that everybody is talking about it. And so we thought that let's have a webinar and let's clear some air as to what would mean and what companies will have to do to comply with this new standards. So CERT-In is a nodal agency. It's a national India's government of India body that acts as a center point of focus for the country in terms of cybersecurity, in terms of collection analysis, in terms of forecasting, in terms of emergency measures, in terms of coordination of cyber incidents, issuing of guidelines, advisories, etc. So that's the importance of CERT-In, and it's a government of India body, and that can mandate any entity in India, and we all will have to comply with the requirements, and there is no escape if this is a mandate. Next slide, please. So now we'll see quickly what are the main directions. The directions, they apply to almost all service providers, intermediaries, data centers, body corporates, and also government organizations, right? And the directions are relating to information security practices, procedures, prevention, response, reporting, cyber incidents for safe and trusted environment. So these are the two major items. These are directions. They're not advisories. They're not guidelines. These are required to be done. They are mandates in my thought, in my opinion, right? And it applies to all, not just VPN providers, all service providers. It says all service providers, data centers, bodies, government organizations. So VPN is just one of the service providers, as we just saw. It applies to everybody. Next slide, please. So in our understanding on the 28th of April directives, there are 6 elements to that, right? 6 aspects to that. First is the time synchronization with NIC or NPL. So time synchronization is one of the important requirements in many of these standards, such as ISO 27001. Also, many of these requires that to maintain a correct uh, cyber incident, we need to know the exact time. If there are different times on different systems, we will not be able to correlate the incidents, and that is the importance of time synchronization, right? We will see that all of these 6 items in some of the details below. The second item is cyber security incidents to be reported in 6 hours. There's a lot of debate going on. How can a data breach be reported in 6 hours and so on? So it's not about just a data breach. The cybersecurity incidents, we will see in the slides what they mean in terms of cybersecurity incidents, and the whole list is been provided by CERT-In. Third point is that you need to provide a point of contact to CERT-In, and whenever they ask for any information, we need to provide them, and any information non-provided to CERT-In will be treated as non-compliance. So it's a non-compliance if you do not provide the information to CERT-In, which is a mandate, right? The next point is storing all logs for 180 days in the Indian jurisdiction. So the data center must be located in India. All logs must be stored in India. So I got some friends also who asked me on WhatsApp and other messages, what is our thought on specifically services that related to cloud, if they are in multiple jurisdictions, some providers are in some other areas, and how can we store it in Indian jurisdiction? Of course, we will address this when we come to that point. Uh, of course, that's our opinion, our thoughts. You may differ, certain may differ, anybody else may differ, but we will provide some thoughts on that. Next point is to maintain client and other related data for minimum 5 years or longer. So CERT-In says that you have to keep the records for 5 years at a minimum or as required by law. Next point is virtual asset providers. So we have cryptos, we have exchanges, we have tokens. Even recently, Finance Ministry has defined what is a virtual asset, and even any tokens, any wallets, any payment systems which are under SEBI or RBI, whatever is the mandate, CERT-In also gives some thoughts on it, and we will see what it is. So these are the 6 areas, 6 highlights in our opinion, and then we will see all of this one by one. Next slide, please, Alva. So time synchronization. So what CERT-In says is that we need to connect to the NTP server, which is the NIC servers, or the National Physical Laboratory, which is NPL, or if you are if you're operating in multiple global environments, make sure that your global servers or the time differences are synced with NIC. Yeah, the system clocks must be synced, and whatever difference must be in sync also. That's what, in our opinion, that means. So that's the second topic, spanning multiple geographies and time zones. So we saw the importance of syncing the time because of cyber incidents. We need to know the exact time as to when it did happen, and what was the impact of that in that particular time, where all the adversaries impacted. And so it's important that we have this time sync in all our systems and servers. Next point, please. Next slide, please. Another major aspect which has gained media attention is cybersecurity incidents are to be reported in 6 hours. So CERT-In, as per their new directive that says that shall mandatorily report cyber incidents to CERT-In within 6 hours of noticing via email to this email ID and to this phone number. What and how details are published on they say we will publish it on the website from time to time. What and how. So this is a requirement, and when and how they will publish from time to time. Next slide, please. So some of these items which need to be reported in 6 hours, let's go through each of them. First is targeted scanning, probing on critical network systems. So if you have somebody who is targeting your systems, right, who is scanning and probing your critical environments, your servers, you need to report also that to CERT-In. Now we saw the many news that how can cyber incidents data breaches be reported on in 6 hours. So data breach is one thing, but all these as per CERT-In constitute a cyber incident, right? It's not just a data breach. I know data breaches take more time to understand and analyze. There are several reports, right? That takes up to maybe 180 days or 200 days or 300 days. Different reports say that to understand a data breach, right? And many organizations till date also do not have a SIM solution or proper log monitoring and incident management and incident response system to get into a data breach or get details of the data breach. I know it's a gray area. Many companies till date are not yet capable of understanding and reporting those incidents, but it is time for those companies to either acquire those systems in-house or hire third parties to to provide that information, right? So service providers can be engaged. Nobody says that you should have all the tools and the workforce within your employees. You can always hire third parties to do what needs to be done, right? So not having a in-house resource is not an excuse to not provide this information. It's a mandate, and not providing also is a non-compliance. So second item is compromise of critical systems and information. Third item is unauthorized access of IT systems and data, defacement of website and intrusion into a website, malicious code attacks, viruses, trojans, spywares, etc. Attack on servers such as databases, mails, DNS systems, routers, etc. Identity theft, spoofing, phishing attacks. So if you have phishing attack, also you need to inform certain within 6 hours, right? Not just a data breach. So data breach is not the only cybersecurity incident, right? Denial of DDoS. So many companies do have anti-DDoS solutions, and if you think that your environment is being attacked, or you have faced such threats, you need to report that, in our opinion, to certain within 6 hours, right? Then attacks on critical infrastructure, SCADA systems, we find that also recently happening a lot. And next is attacks on applications such as e-governance, e-commerce, etc. So whatever the system, you have a phishing attack, you have a DDoS attack, you have a worm attack, you have a ransomware attack, you have unauthorized access to your systems, compromising of your systems, they all need to be reported to certain. Next slide, please. Data breach is one we discussed, right? Data breach can take a longer time to understand, but whenever you understand, whenever you know that data breach has happened, right, and you are sure to know that, you have to report that. Data leak is something else. Attacks to IoT devices. So we see that even a lot of IoT devices are now in use, specifically with the new smart world and the smart way of thinking, smart meters, etc. All of those come under the IoT devices. And if there is an attack on the Internet of Things or any of the smart infrastructure, they would be all be covered here. Also, attacks on incidents affecting digital payment systems. Any digital payment systems are also covered. Attacks to malicious code, mobile apps, fake mobile apps, unauthorized access to social media accounts, right? Attacks on malicious, suspicious activities in cloud computing also, right? 3D printing, 4D printing, big data, even drones. Attack on the drones also need to be reported as a cybersecurity incident. Last point here is applications related to AI, machine learning, suspicious activities, they all need to be reported. So it's not just a data breach, any potential impact, any DDoS attack, anything which concerns any critical infrastructure, any systems, any e-commerce platforms, all of these, they have to be reported within 6 hours. Next slide, please. So the next point, third point, is non-compliance. So what CERT-In says is they need the information for protecting and preventing cyber incidents in the country, and this is the information that they will use for protecting our country, right? And these are directives, and the point it says is any the direction may include format of the information that is required, specified, which should be adhered to, and compliance provided to certain, else it would be treated as non-compliance. So clearly the PDF states that if you do not adhere to these requirements and you do not report, it will be treated as non-compliance. All service providers, right, will need to provide a point of contact in the prescribed format, and that will need to be registered with CERT-In, and CERT-In will communicate with those points of contact. Information related to port is provided in next year. So we have a sample also here provided in the next slide, and the point of contact is the focal point for communicating with the CERT-In. Next slide, please. So this is the format that CERT-In has provided in the document, and simple, not very confusing. Next slide, please. So coming to the logs. Log retention is an important aspect. So logs are important to even understand the incidents and of course data breaches also. We need to also correlate these logs. We need SIM systems. We need indicators of compromise. We need the entire security operations center in an environment to understand the implication of cyber incidents. That is a separate topic itself, incident management, and organizations which need to mature their incident management and log management and an SIM all put together need to take a relook, and this is an important step for or an aspect, an important, I would say, reason for organizations to step up their infrastructure now. The time given by CERT-In is 60 days, right, from the date of the notification of date of directives. So 60 days, within 60 days, organizations need to be ready. They need to provide all the information as requested under the new directives, right? And in my opinion, 60 days may be less, but that is the mandate as of now. We don't know what is the relaxation would come or not come, but managing and putting up an incident management in place in 60 days is definitely challenging. Definitely challenging, I would say that. But it is not an excuse for not doing it at all, right? So if we never do it, we will never be able to comply with it, right? So if we start today, maybe 60, if not 60 days, 90 days, whatever time it takes, at least on a war footing, if we move towards it, we will be able to get to certain maturity. I'm not saying we get on a maturity level 5 on a scale of 1 to 5 on day one, but at least we can start from one, step two, step three, step four, and five, right? We cannot be always at zero, right? We need to improve our cyber maturity, specifically on the incident management and incident response side of it, on a level going from level of 0 to level 5, if you are looking at a scale of 5. So, so it also says that logs of all ICT systems to be retained for the rolling period of 180 days and stored in Indian jurisdiction, right? So, so how a cloud provider who is using AWS or Azure or any of the systems which are not in the Indian data center. So there may be some service providers where the some of the marketplace item where um, some kind of logs are not available in Indian data center. So does that mean that we do not take those services, right? Specifically, which are in the US server zone or which are in some other country zone? Our thought, our opinion on this is yes. Specifically, Amazon allows you to get on the cloud tail, and you can also export all your logs into an S3 bucket. And those S3 buckets, if they are in some other zones, they can be replicated or copied into the Indian data center environment. So this is one workaround. I'm not sure if this is would be accepted or not, but at least you would store those logs and others in the Indian jurisdiction, in the Indian data center. You could copy them, you could take it from the systems, you could export them from their other servers, other service providers, and store them in the Indian data center. So the idea is all those logs, wherever you are impacted on your servers, on your services, need to be stored in the Indian location. This could be a workaround. Maybe you could enter into an SLA with the service providers to provide you the logs if there is not specifically mentioned as, or they don't provide specifically. Maybe you could sign up an SLA, and within as part of the SLA, they would give you the logs and all the data, and those can be taken up and exported and retained in the Indian data center. This is one of the solutions that we think of. Maybe CERT-In comes with more guidelines, more FAQs in future to explain what they mean by this, or how this can be done. Next slide, please. Highlight 5. It talks about client data retention. So it says maintain client and other related information with minimum 5 years. So data centers, now here we come to the virtual server providers, cloud service providers, virtual private network service providers required to register the following accurate information, which must be kept by them for 5 years or longer as mandated by the law, or after any cancellation or withdrawal. So once you have cancelled or withdrawn a service to a particular person or a company, you will need to keep these data for at least 5 years. What is that? Validated names of subscribers, customers hiring the services, period of hire including dates, IPs allotted to or being used by those members, email addresses and IP addresses, and timestamp used by the time of registration, onboarding, purpose for hiring, validated address and contact numbers, ownership pattern of the subscribers, customers, hiring services, etc. So we find a lot of, as we have seen in the initial slides, a lot of media attention that as to how VPN service providers can have some of this information which they may or may not be collecting as of now. And some say that they don't have the technical resources to even have such a kind of data, and they may or may not be able to, comply with such a regulation. So VPN service providers are only one such service providers, but it also applies to data centers, applies to virtual servers providers, cloud providers, and everybody else. So this is the mandate as of now. Let's see what the FAQs come out. We don't want to do a guess as to what would come and what would not come. Let's wait and watch for what CERT-In provides any more clarifications. But as a mandate, it stands as of today. Next slide, please. So the sixth point is the KYC retention. So there is a lot of discussion on the new cryptos, the virtual currencies, virtual assets. Companies are buying and selling bitcoins, other tokens, other currencies, and there is no record as to what is happening. There is there are blockchain issues. There is a cybersecurity issues with blockchain, virtual assets. Money is being transmitted and and sent out from India to other parts of the world, and there is no reporting of some of these exchanges or the cyber incidents towards such areas also. So I believe this is a step in the right direction. At least all of those intermediaries which were not under DOT, SEBI, or RBI, or any of the other regulatory bodies would definitely fall under the certain regulation requirements, right? So all of these exchanges or any other wallets or any other kind of services which do not fall into any other requirements, or even if they fall in other requirements, they will also fall under the certain mandates for compliance with the cybersecurity requirements. Next slide. Do we have any more slides? Yeah. So what it says is the KYC retention, also it says for retention for 5 years. What is required? Whatever you're collecting as KYC information: passport, driving license, proof of possession of Aadhaar number, voter's identity card, job cards, letters issued by the national regulator for population registry, validated phone numbers, trading account numbers, etc. So this is what it says, that whatever is the KYC information, some of these are provided here, they need to be retained for a minimum period of 5 years or more, as required under the mandate. Next slide, please. So that's all we had for today, and this is again a disclaimer that whatever we have said today, whatever we have stated, is is our thoughts, our opinions. It is not a certain opinion, and we claim it to be. We are taking this as a disclaimer, right? This is only provided for an idea purposes, right? Whatever certain mandates is applicable to everybody, And and these suggestions were not for general, they were general in nature and not addressed to anybody specific. If you need a specific advice for your particular environment, we request you to kindly email us at info@scj.io. Maybe we could provide you our thoughts on what could apply to your specific environment. But whatever we have said, they were all general in nature. They were all media and other thoughts which has come out of the new directives by certain, and we would not want to claim any responsibility towards that, right? I think we closed in earlier, and we have some more time for questions. And I would urge anybody, if you have any questions, to put it on the QA box. Meanwhile, Alva can run the poll and take in your poll questions.
So I'm just starting the polls now. And if you guys can see on your screens, the polls should be active. There are just 3 questions, and it would be great if you guys can start answering the polls. Meanwhile, also you can see that there is a Q&A box. So I'd like to request everybody that, if you have any questions pertaining to our webinar today, you can just post those in the Q&A box, and Mr. Ashwin will be addressing those. But before that, as requested, please just complete the polls. Yeah, I see that a lot of people have still not completed the polls. Please, can you guys just quickly, give your inputs for the polls, and then we can move on to the questions.
There are a lot of questions, so while people complete the polls, we will start the question and answers, because there are a lot of many and there are a lot of technical things. So I think let's start with the questions. The first question is, can we get a participation certificate? We do not issue a participation certificate. We can only send you the recording, and if you have registered on this, so you will automatically get a recording of this webinar. Now, second question is, IT Act has been updated for this mandate on certain update requirements. So, in my opinion, is this mandate is derived from the IT Act itself. The IT Act states that whatever is required to be done, right, in our opinion, and this mandate is based on the IT Act itself, right? That's my thought itself. Although I'm not a legal person, we can check on with some legal lawyer on this sort of topic. But what the document it says is, as under the Act itself, these new directives have come. So can we decide the scope of the systems to be covered for incident reporting? Good question. Excellent. Now, incident reporting is for your specific environment, right? You will definitely define what your environment consists. Your LAN systems, your WAN systems, your cloud systems, your applications, your users who are using your edge devices, IoT devices, or whatever case may be. Definitely, the incident management process has to be defined by you. Who else would know, right? What constitutes your environment in terms of IT and ICT systems? Definitely, you will need to define what constitutes your whole IT based on your network architecture, based on your databases, based on your data, everything. If you need to look at a data breach, you also need to have not only your ICT system, but inventory of all your datas, also data flow diagrams, right? How would you, if you don't have that, how would you even yeah, comply with such systems? So definitely you will need to do a revisit of all your assets, right? Have a full inventory of all your data flows, your ICT, hardware, software assets, right? To come up with a full-fledged incident management response plan and plan for whole fledged. So next question is for a foreign bank where network security and SOC services are shared, how do we maintain ICT logs in India since logs can contain data for enterprises and not for only India Bank? I think there's already a clarification on this as per the RBI mandate that the transactions related to Indians need to be shared in India. So if there is a transaction related to Indians, right, they will need to be kept in the Indian jurisdiction. There's already a there's a clarification by RBI on this. So I'm not sure what exact question is. If you can reach out to us on email, maybe we can have a call to understand and discuss that in depth. But RBI has already given this clarification. Does this certain directive apply to private firms? Yes, excellent question. Now, it applies to all service providers, whether you are a proprietorship or a partnership or a private limited company or a limited company or an institution, even trust or a government institution. As long as you're providing services to somebody else, it applies to you. And it doesn't say that it should be a 1,000 member company or a 5,000 member company or a 100 crore company. There's no such mandate. So it applies to everybody, even if you're a single person service provider, right? It applies to you also. That's my thought. That's my opinion. There's no, based on what is stated in this document, but let's wait and watch if certain provides any clarifications on this directive. But as it's stated in this, I understand that it applies to anybody and everybody in India, operating in India, not just VPN providers and not just anybody who's providing services and who's retaining data. It applies to them. Next question is, what is the consequence of non-compliance? I don't know honestly because the directive does not state anything specifically, and I would not get into doing any guesswork at this time. Next question is, Indian government asking to VPN providers to store the data for 5 years in India territory. Is this good from privacy perspective? Yes, there's a good debate on the media also as to we are taking all the data and it will impact privacy. My privacy is impacted, and so and so and so. So in many countries, whatever information the government takes, right, in some laws is excluded from privacy. The government already has your passport data. The government already has your UID. The government already has your PAN. The government already has your banking transactions with the nationalized banks. The government already has all the income tax returns, already has all your data, right? They already have all your transactional data with them. They already have privacy. Privacy, in my opinion, is other than government. The government can have your data, they have your data, right? And they should have the data from security purposes, right? It should not be misused. Yes, agreed. I agree. But just having a data does not violate any privacy. That's my thought and that's my opinion. You may differ to that, but as a privacy professional also, right? The government is ought to have all the data concerning every individual in the country, and that's a right for every government, in my opinion, right? Does not violate privacy at all. If you do some kind of crime, right, that is the only way the government can get the information. Otherwise there's no other way to get this information, right? And to maintain security and sovereignty of the country, it may be important for them, and they thought it's important, and that's the reason the directive has come. Next point is it applicable to BPM based out of India providing services to UK or US clients? Um, my thought on this is, are you operating in India? You're operating in India, right? Your servers are in India. Your employees are in India. Whether you're providing services to India or outside India, right? The critical infrastructure is of the country. You're using our Indian ISP. You're using our Indian employees. You're using our the Indian critical infrastructure to provide those services, right? So, so the cyber incidents, some of those aspects will definitely apply. I'm not sure about the KYC and other relevant information may apply to you or not, but the cyber incident reporting, the time zone synchronization, everything would apply. That's my thought. Next question is, if a global company uses its own proprietary VPN solution for its operations in India, what would be the compliance requirement in this case? So it is not about in-house or third-party services, right? Company, if it's having its own systems, right, they already have all the data with them. They already know which employees you're using, which employee is logging. They have all the information with them itself, right? So what is the UN cry about it? I am really not getting the exact point, right? Global company having own proprietary VPN. If I am having my own VPN, I know who's logging in. I have all the logs, who logged in, what time, and everything. So I have to keep the logs for 5 years. That's important, and all those information are already there with us. So I'm not understanding what exactly is your question. If you can please email us, that will be great. Next question is, any defined timelines for this implementation expected to be done by service providers? This is already provided. I did address this question also. CERT-In says that you need to, this is applicable from 60 days of the directive. So 60 days is the deadline for everybody to get ready to provide these information to CERT-In. All service providers, banks, finance companies, wallets, right? Crypto exchanges, not just VPNs. Just because VPN is in the media, forget VPNs. Any service provider for cloud services, you're a SaaS provider, IaaS provider, PaaS provider, anything, even IoT devices, any service provider, right, is falling under this tablet, under this directive. Small, medium, one member company or 100,000 member company. It doesn't say so. Doesn't say whether it's a 1 crore company or hundreds of crores or $1 billion company or billions of dollars company. It doesn't say so. It applies to everybody. Manufacturing. Next question is, manufacturing industry using the net for purposes of manufacture products for their own. Is it applicable to such manufacturing company? So any company, any service provider, any manufacturing companies are manufacturing at one end, but they're also providing services. They are selling, distributing. That's all service providers. Just manufacturing doesn't end at just manufacturing. Manufacturing is just one piece of the process. The other process is selling and distributing. You're selling, you're distributing. It's a service. If you're using the Indian infrastructure, right, for manufacturing, providing services, in my opinion, it is applicable to everybody. Government organizations, institutions, cloud providers, everybody. Anybody who's using our critical infrastructure, you're using systems, servers, this directive is applicable. So it has got wide ramifications, in my opinion, and it's applicable to everybody. So these are the questions which we had for now. If there are any more questions, we can wait for 1 or 2 minutes if you want to shoot up. Else, we'll wait for 2 minutes and we will give you back your 15 minutes of time today, as we ended this earlier, and we did not envisage to be short, but the topic was short and we did not want to elaborate on other topics. So one more question. Um, in certain scenarios, the client A provides the endpoint security for the users. However, when such users who are working as consultant from company B are working offshore, then the user is supposed to be responsible for any malware or data breach in the system. However, how can the company B keep a track of the same, and who will be responsible for the same? Good question. Um, Companies are now having centralized malware solutions, right? They have dashboards as to what users are having. If a user is impacted, and as long as it is connected to the main systems, they keep a track of what users have, what malware. Recently, we migrated to Office 365, and even in a diverse way where companies and people are working across the globe, right? There are solutions, right, there where malware can be infected for people who are using the laptops across the globe, right? Specifically, Microsoft Defender, Intune, right? It gives a real-time information as to what malware is infected or not infected, whether the system is impacted or not impacted. All users' machines, there are tools and technologies available today that malware information will be available. But malware is a small thing, right, which will happen every day. Doesn't mean that all such malware incidents may have to be reported. That would be overwhelming for certain, in my opinion. But I would think that they would come out with a advice as to what specific malware, or is it an infection, a malware, and a system down caused by malware or not? Because every day, every time, there would be some virus, some malware, something coming in the system. Does that mean that we would report every small incident to certain? Let's wait and watch. In my opinion, no, because it would not be practical for every company to do that. But if a if there's an incident due to malware or the systems are down, of course I would expect that to be reported. If all these services, next question, if all these services are outsourced to cloud providers, responsibilities to follow certain requirements will be with whom? Or the CSP, any steps provided by certain which can be referred on the same. Now, good question. Outsourcing to cloud does not absolve you of the responsibility. Cloud providers has clearly provided a shared responsibility model to everybody, whether you're on Amazon or whether you're on Google or whether you're on Azure or any environment. The application and data responsibility is yours. Yours means if it's a SaaS provider, it's them. You have to look at what is your contract with the CSP if you're taking a SaaS provider. If you're taking an IaaS as a service or a PaaS as a service, look at your contract. The responsibility could be yours. Even if they are providing you the platform, does not mean that they are taking the full responsibility for compliance with certain. They would take only where it is their obligation, only if it is their responsibility. But an IaaS provider will not take the responsibility for the application and the data. The data and the application responsibility is still yours. If you are using a SaaS company, right, which is abroad or in India, you will need to perhaps, have an agreement with them or check as to how you can comply with these specific certain requirements. But if you're taking an IaaS provider, the data security application responsibility is still yours, not of the CSPs from an application and data perspective. So it's a shared responsibility model. Just because it is a cloud, you cannot push everything to the cloud. The responsibility of compliance will be yours. Just because you hire a consultant does not mean that the responsibility is also given to them, right? The responsibility is still yours. I would take this as a last question. how privacy of details provided has been ensured as threat landscape is a read day by day. I'm not sure if I'm understanding the question, but I would try to answer the way I understand it. How privacy of details provided has been ensured. The certain does not say that will share the data to somebody else. I think we just had another question on the privacy also topic related, but I would repeat that the government of India has all your data, your passport data, your Aadhaar data, your PAN card data, all your transactional history. They still have that, right? Privacy violation is misuse of the data. If the government is misusing that data, you can you can talk about privacy violations or something. But as long as the data is being used for the country's sovereignty, country's security, it is not a misuse in my thought, in my opinion, right? And and let me reiterate that many countries also, if they're taking all the data, they have been having all the data since hundreds of years, right? Why are we talking of privacy today? Just because we are on the internet world, right? The government has been keeping your birth data, dead data, the time from the time we were born until we die, the entire data is available with government. And we are only providing this data to the government of India, no to no one else. I don't know why the media and everybody else is creating such a hue and cry on privacy. We are concerned about the security of the systems. We're not talking about privacy here at all. And privacy is irrelevant in this aspect when it comes to the security of the country and cybersecurity incidents. There is a new bill which is already in place in the parliament, India Data Protection Bill, which is being debated, and privacy, in my opinion, would be addressed there. All the details on the privacy as to what the government is finally going to do would be addressed in the Indian Data Protection Bill. We already had a session on that, and you can find it on our YouTube channel. You can go to that webinar and play that out. It's available on YouTube channel, and privacy is already addressed there. And today's session is not about privacy at all. It is about the security, sovereignty, and cybersecurity incidents. What is there in our country, and we need a central source to have all the cybersecurity incidents in one place. And in my opinion, as a final note, it is a good move. In my opinion, it is better for the country, it is better for the citizens of a country, and it's better for everybody who is wishing good for the country. I think this is the final question we will take now. It's the last one, no more questions. We'll close the call. Government organizations are using third party for processing of data of Indian residents. So how privacy of data would be ensured? Again, we are talking about security here. We are not talking about privacy at all. If government organization using third party, it is for them to have the controls from a data security and privacy perspective. They have to have SLAs, need to have contracts, they need to have make sure they need to audit those third parties, they need to make sure that whomsoever they have contracted with are following these mandates. The response, even if they are outsourced to third party, the responsibility cannot be outsourced. Responsibility is still yours. Responsibility is again of the government entity or any other entity which has outsourced that service. It is the entity which is outsourcing the service to make sure that their service providers are falling in line. When GDPR came, right, all the companies amended the contract. They have to comply, all the third parties have to comply with GDPR also. Similarly, if a new mandate comes, you have to make sure that your third parties, your vendors, your service providers are complying to what is required under the law, which impacts you. And you can check with your lawyers. We are not a law firm, we are an audit firm. We do not want to give any law related advice. You can connect with your legal firm and take a legal opinion from them. We are auditors and we would like to restrict our opinion only from an audit perspective. And that's all that we had for today. And I would thank everybody. Thank
Thank you
everybody
all.
for, yeah, Alva, you want to say some ending words?
Yeah, just thank you everybody for joining our webinar. And if you have any further questions, you can always email us. Also, quick thing that we also, conduct trainings for ISO related to privacy, like 27001 to 7701. So if you guys are even interested in those trainings, you can always email us, and we'll send you our details. So yeah, hope you had a good time in our webinar today and learned something. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. We'll close
Thank
the
you.
call now. Thank you. Bye.